Yes. So, um, Rupert uh, is a frustration, as I say to many of his critics, by insisting on uh, providing the experimental regimen that would falsify the things he's suggesting, and by insisting, as I say, on focusing on phenomena we know
Mhm.
occur, even though we're forbidden by the dogmas of our age from acknowledging them. And one is, as I said, here's this book, When Dogs Know Their Masters Are Coming Home. Well, we all know this, right? I mean, even people who come home at irregular times don't have a fixed schedule when they're far away. Anyone who's had animals know that animals are aware that they get up on the sofa and start waiting, even if it's again not at a particular time of day. And since we've all had this experience, we acknowledge it to ourselves, we acknowledge it to our friends and family, and we deny it ferociously if when anyone suggests that it should be taken seriously simply because it's real. Um, and that's part of the pleasure of the provocations of someone who has the reputation of being exotic and wildly speculative, but who in fact is about as empirically minded and predictably British in that regard as anyone could be.
Yeah, that's why I like the point about radical empiricism. And
Mm.
and the other one of the consequences of this, right, it seems, is that because it doesn't fit into the metaphysics of at least contemporary science, then rather than rethink the metaphysics, we just say, well, this is just a lot of mystical hooey and move on.
Yeah, I mean, it supposedly, um, and this was, of course, the initial challenge of the age of induction. Anyway, is that any theory is judged against the evidence rather than the evidence supposedly being forced to fit the theory. And this is supposedly the great piety of modern science. And in some respects, it is, right? Many of the advances of the modern age have come about as a result of a genuine abstention from speculative claims within particular contexts. But the moment you begin uh, moving out of that context and stop using the method as an as if, it's amazing how quickly our whole sense of reality demands that we transform it into a metaphysical truth or an axiomatic truth. And that's why, I mean, think about when Thomas Kuhn came along and argued uh, what seemed like a fairly obvious set of propositions regarding the way the paradigms of the sciences shift. The resistance he got as a relativist, when what he seemed to be doing was reiterating the inductive
Mhm.
creed, which is that the theories have to yield to the evidence rather than the reverse. Um, so it's never really the case, is it? I mean, I work also a lot of work in philosophy of mind, and of course, in the realm of philosophy, there is no field in which it's more the case that um, the evidence will be denied rather than the theory abandoned if failure to do so imperils any larger metaphysical picture. I mean, Daniel Dennett, he was a
Yeah,
virtuoso.
yeah, his name immediately sprang to mind.
Yeah, I mean, as someone said to me not long ago, he was the brightest stupid person or the stupidest brilliant person of his generation. He had all that intellect, and he devoted it so assiduously to preposterous ideas because the picture of reality that emerged from behind those ideas was the one he wanted to embrace. And it just goes to show you, really, that that a blind article of faith is always has the power to make us despise our own pathetic reliance on our senses and our reason. You know, so.
Yeah, it does seem that from what I've been able to glean of Rupert's work, that his grounding in the empirical and even the sensuous or sensual um, is really something that none of his critics seems to either grant or notice, or I don't
But
know what.
but you know, he's
Um,
enjoying a moment right now because more and more, as there's been a slow but inexorable shift, I think, in certain parts of the paradigm of the
yeah,
life sciences, they've also pointed toward, and physics for some time, is the more that people relinquish the sort of habitual mechanistic view that they hold to, even though they know that in fact it's not literally true. Nonetheless, Dennis a perfect example. He knew that the science of the 20th century was not technically clockwork mechanism for the, but he continued thinking that way till he died. And
right. In a sense, because he had to.
he had to.
Yeah.
And even when, like when Michael Levin, his one of his colleagues at Tufts, is doing more work on xenobots. Well, whatever you think of it, nonetheless, demonstrating fairly powerfully that there's a kind of an intentional structure in the way living systems work from the cellular level up, even. And now he's positing something like a kind of almost middle Schellingian animism or Bergsonianism, or you know,
Right.
or life force or whatever, but not as extrinsic. But yeah. um, then it absorbed all the research, but the conclusion he drew is, he would say, yeah, these are intentional systems. These are cognitive systems all the way
Mhm.
down, I should say. He was very,
Right.
as if you can have the one without the other. But then he would still say, because we're composed of millions of little robots. And I maintain that, when you're talking about robots, sooner or later you've got to get to the source code that makes a robot rather than Robbie the robot,
Right.
animated by, yes. Um, so yes, I look forward to talking to Reuben. Charming man, and also a rich spiritual life, as you mentioned. He knew Bede Griffiths, so talk to him
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, but yeah, he's enjoying a moment now. I would say. I think that people are beginning to realize that the more fundamentalist we are in our materialism, the more we find ourselves being thwarted by the evidence.
Yeah, I want to
Or
ask him, especially since I know that he didn't just practice science as I think a biochemist, right? But he also studied the history of science
yeah,
and has extensively studied the history of science. And I want to ask him if he thinks of himself in continuity with these capital R romantic scientists that I remember mentioning with John Milbank earlier. Von Humboldt and Humphrey Davy and the rest of them. Because he seems to me to echo that lineage
right.
um, and bring it up to date. The other thing when I don't know why I kept thinking about this when I was reading through his work, but the way that Kropotkin was trying to at least amend, if not upend, the Darwinian pieties of the late 19th century when he was writing about mutual aid.
Yeah,
And I remember Stephen Jay Gould writing this nasty essay about Kropotkin. Um, I can't remember which one of his books it's in, but I just remember thinking, man, this is so wrong-headed and so dismissive of the evidence that Kropotkin puts forward.
well, what's funny is now Kropotkin looks somewhat cutting edge, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
more field study is done, and just the things that have been found about the behavior of wolves, for instance.
right.
Um, these supposedly evolved systems that don't look just like evolved systems that out of a prior struggle of each against all. But also, we see this cooperative structure in organic systems now. I mean, more and more in our understanding of the systemic uh, integration of organisms in themselves. And it seems bizarre to deny that this should extend, especially when cooperation is at least as evident a fact about organic communities as competition. In fact, more so. I mean, and it is at the bottom of it is just this sort of neo-Darwinian orthodoxy regarding, well, if you want to use the infantile imagery of Dawkins, that the replicators are the genes and we're the vehicles, and the selfish gene is we're the great lumbering robots, and well, since that sort of genetocentrism looks more and more implausible the more we understand about life sciences, the whole neo-Darwinian project begins to look like one attempt to approach one partial truth about natural selection that seems self-evidently true, that what survives. But yeah, no, Kropotkin, it's funny, you read him now on cooperative mutual aid cooperation, yep. And he looks like he could be discussing advances in biological field studies from last Tuesday. But you always expect your anarcho-communists to get it right in the end, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, they're right about everything else. So, why not?
Well,
why not science?
Kropotkin may have had too great a faith in the power of science to redeem. I should point out, but yes, he was right about many things. I suppose we shouldn't veer off into a political discussion right now, just for fear of
heightening both of our blood pressures.
Yeah.
Yeah.